Welcome to the third edition of Africa Photo Fair here at Mokat. We are here in Abobo in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. In this edition of the festival, we are featuring 67 photographers from 30 countries. Often people ask me, how do I make the selection? What are my objectives and so forth? And the key thing, the first obviously, is that it's interesting and good work, but also it's a way to share to the audience the different spectrums of what photography is. That photography is not just one style, but there's such a huge spectrum of when we really talk about the influence and the impacts of photography. So through this installation, we've had a lot of engagements, we've had different programming, but more importantly, what I find the most rewarding is when I see young people in the museum really taking their time to look at the work, to read the text, and to understand better of an image that was created by someone either in a country in Africa or across the world. So through this, I found that in this edition, we've had a very amazing reception, and there's nothing more amazing for me to come into the museum each day and to see young people really going around, taking their time to look at the work. And I believe that this should be really the role of creativity. It is for us to share what we are creating, but at the same time also having an impact on the audience that's looking on. One of the most difficult things I think is, a lot of people wonder how we managed to install a show of this size in such a short period of time. And the key thing has always been is about the team, and that's one thing that I'm always very grateful for. Often, especially when I was in Addis Ababa, one of the key focuses for me is that how do I train the team and keep the same team in each edition. So for example, this festival, the printing was done inside my studio. This is one of the great things of having a machine that can produce these images, because often when we talk about photography festivals, the biggest challenge in Africa is that we have to have the stuff printed abroad. But for me, the most important thing is that the fact that there's a machine here that we utilize, and this is also a way for us to show the level of quality of what printing really looks like. And for this edition, for example, we had over 300 prints, and installing it took us about, I believe, 18 hours, which hasn't been like an easy task in itself. But when you have a great team that really believes in the vision, and one thing that I've realized over the years of doing a festival is that when the team believes that there's an ownership from their side, then that's how we're able to make great things happen. So for me, having this style of an exhibition and this type of space really lends itself well for me to do different things as it relates to presenting work and through a different view. Besides my team that works, endlessly, and we've had, many crazy hours of production, none of it really would have been possible without my partners. So for me, the one thing is that Canon being a big supporter as it relates to providing us with trainers and also being able to print all this work, it's one of the biggest rewards to be able to have access to that. And for me also, in cultural funding, often people wonder, how do you finance for this? How does this, work and so forth? And for this year, I'm very grateful through the support of the Swiss Embassy, the Spanish Embassy, and also the European Union here in Abidjan. And often when we talk about cultural productions in Africa, one of the key things is that it requires support, because at the end we're trying to also develop new creatives and to be able to also share with the community, what is art, what is photography, all these elements. So for the support of all the donors and all the different entities that have really been part of this project, as we expand and each year as we become a stronger festival and increase visibility, none of it is really possible without the belief of the people that have supported us and have really gone out of their ways to make this event possible. Since starting the Addis Photo Fest in Ethiopia and bringing it here to Abidjan as Africa Photo Fair, the one key component for me is the portfolio review. Because often, within our continent, one of the key elements for getting talent into the international market is just a matter of giving them information, resources, and to help them understand what the international market looks like. So each year I invite different experts to come and give workshops, but more importantly to review the works of selected photographers. And through that input, I've always seen this dramatic change in photographers' works. And one of the most important things for me is that if we're to change the image of Africa, we have to also create our own image makers, which means is that they need to also understand how to be competitive in the international market, but at the same time also how to tell our own stories. So this kind of engagement as it relates to the portfolio review, it's one of those things where People think that, we're only doing an exhibition, but we actually have many different activities that we program in, because at the end, we have to be able to develop that talent base. And it is really through that we're able to also shift this perception of what is Africa. And as many of you know, Africa is not only one thing, it's many things, and that has to have a visual representation for me. One of the things that has been very interesting for me in this edition is I decided to program in a bookmaking workshop. If many of you have noticed, we don't have that many photo books in the market, especially in the international market. And all of these things is really not just tied into the creation of the work, but also the publishing of books. As many of us have encountered, it's quite difficult to make a book within the continent. So this year, we managed to make a bookmaking workshop just to show photographers how to edit their work, how to tell a story within the book, but more importantly, to just get them thinking that as photographers, we should always aspire not only to have an exhibition or to just only make the work, but also to make a book. And one of my key philosophies is that the book is really a walking exhibition. It's also a way for us to archive ourselves within the international context. So the bookmaking workshop was quite exciting. The students were fully engaged in it. And to me, it's been really exciting to see the results of what they have made through this bookmaking workshop. This year, we've had a few photographers that came to share their wealth of knowledge. This is something that I'm very grateful for, to have passionate and dedicated photographers that want to share sort of their wealth of knowledge. So for the third edition, we had Shireen Abdi, who started off actually before we even started the festival to give a workshop on photojournalism. And then we also had Paulo Verazon, who did this amazing lighting workshop. It's exciting to see students that finally get it, or all the things, the questions that they've had finally being answered, and to see that result sort of coming up in their work. And for me, each year, the whole goal of making a specific type of programming is to address sort of what is lacking within either the education system or some of the things that I've seen when I'm printing the works or looking at reviewing works by different photographers that we get submissions from. So for this year, for example, when Paolo was doing the workshop, we decided to have the workshop at the museum. So him utilizing the compound of the museum and also the neighborhood streets. It was a very fascinating engagement, because that's when you also understand that young people are naturally inclined towards images. So we had different people from the community, agreeing to have their portraits taken. Everybody was very excited. And to see that energy, it's very inspirational for me. So for me, it's been quite an amazing experience to see the students go from one workshop to the next, and just to see how they are sort of changing towards that process. Because we live in the digital world, one thing that I've realized is that most photographers do not know their work in the printed form. And the one thing that I always say is that you have to be able to see your prints, and the key element is not just having random prints made, but really to try to show them what quality printing looks like. So this year, for the first time, I decided, okay, let me try to do a printmaking workshop. And often, most photographers exist only through the screen of their laptops. They don't know how their image translates into paper. So this year's printing workshop was, I found that it was one of those workshops that for many photographers, because you have to remember, often when I'm selecting photographers for the festival, these are photographers that haven't really participated in any kind of festivals, or they've never seen their work printed at the level that I'm aspiring to reach. And the key thing is that when you show them, what printing looks like, to give them examples. And I always say, printing is the way to find the secrets of the photographer. So sometimes everything looks really nice on the screen, but then when you print it out, you realize, okay, you need to go back to editing. So, and this is something that I've learned even with my own work. So doing the printing workshop this year was really one of those key components. And again, to sort of close the circle. So to me, it's not just about shooting and editing and so forth. In order to fulfill that gap, you also need to know, what does your image look like in the printed form, in the physical form. Inside the museum, this is one of my favorite rooms. And I think a lot of people also really like this room, because it's almost like a small cocoon. We call it the petit salon. But this year I decided to showcase just in this room the project that I had worked on through the End Fund. And again, when we look at all the different types of works that are here, it's again to let photographers understand that through visual communication, we can actually advocate for different topics and different styles. So in this room here, this is a touring exhibition that has gone to different parts of the world. The most recent one being showcased in Nairobi and now here in Abidjan. And for me, it's, it was quite important to select photographers from not only different parts of the region, but that have different styles, talking about neglected tropical disease. And often I find that, when we look at international media or how we represent it in our difficulties as it relates to the continent, we always see sort of the same cliche image or the one-sided story as we always talk about. So in here, it's really a way to show the power of the image, how we can transmit images while also maintaining the dignity of people that are in hardship. But more importantly, for the End Fund, it's something that I was very appreciative of, to sort of give me that chance in order for me to utilize the different talents of the continent to address something very specific. And for me, it wasn't only having my view in it, but also to have the views of different photographers from these different regions, because I was curious as well how they see NTD in their own countries and also how they're going to represent it. Besides only doing photography-related workshops, so for example, this year we had a smartphone workshop, we had social media through your phone, we had also a video workshop. Again, it is about like how do we teach young people to utilize the tools that they have in hand. So when we look at, most kids or most young people have a smartphone, there's a way to get them into the idea of being able to tell a story through the devices that they have. And from my experience also at Anador School, the key element for me was that we want young people to start imagining and to be able to document this specific time in their region, in their country, or even in their own personal stories. And through these kind of activations, the one thing that I've seen is that it gives us an interesting understanding of the area of Abobo, to know what are young people thinking about. So through these types of engagement and having seen also the number of visitors that we've had, for an example, last year we had like over 9,000 visitors, and I understood that the community was coming into the museum because it was something that, the way that the MOCAT for me operates, it's not just a museum, but effectively it is like a community center. So whenever there's an exhibition here, you see a lot of young people coming in here to engage, to look at what's happening, to look at the collection. So for this year, what I decided to do was that to do a set of soft skill development workshops. It is something that I haven't done in the past, but I figured if we're bringing, if we're able to attract visitors to come in, then we should provide different things that would be of use. So this year we had a financial literacy workshop. And again, this is, directed at to teach people what is entrepreneurship, how to set up your small business, and to really understand what financing looks like, and so forth. We also had a digital literacy workshop, and that for me was also a very interesting engagement. Here in the MOCAT, there's a computer lab, and so to me I said, okay, I'm sure there's young people that want to learn more about how to use their computers. And when I spoke to the students, I asked them, what else are you interested in learning? And most of them, they were saying that they want to learn coding, or they want to learn Photoshop, or they want to understand better, how to put together a document. So again, these are really life skills that are sort of embedded through education, that as we move into sort of this technologically based world, is quite important to sort of offer these opportunities for young people to understand that technology is really what's moving things forward, and for them to also understand how to use a computer. And then the one key component was also to a children's art workshop. So again, when I'm doing the programming, what I'm interested in is that how do we have an activity that also makes young people think about their life, or to help them to express their realities. So the children's art workshop was really also an activity that we had an organized way of doing it, but we realized that for the area, a lot of children are interested in these kind of activities. And then the key thing also is that, it's not about only developing the mind, but also we have to take care of the body. So this year, we did 2 sessions of a mobile health clinic where we did screenings for hypertension and diabetes. And again, this is to engage the community, for them to know that when they come in, is that we're offering them something also useful for their own lives. And to me, the amount of reception that we've had, and also the comments that we've received from the community. Again, this is my philosophy, obviously, is that when we do these kind of cultural activities, we also have to make an effort to really embed within it something that's going to be useful also to those that are not only viewing the works, but also to help them in sort of whatever their stage of life that they're in. And to me, it's really, it's been quite a fulfilling event, but more importantly, the most exciting part, I can't stop talking about it, it's really when we see young people, taking selfies in front of the image or posing as if they are, pretending to be whatever the photographer has captured in the image. So this is how you know that, the power of creativity, the power of art actually has a way of transmitting something much more further and something that's actually lasting and memorable. And this is why I'm very grateful to have had this opportunity to continue building this activity here in Abidjan.